When things build up, your brain's not working the way it should be. Most people I talk to have gone through periods where they were suicidal. They tend to be closeted gay men, right, who have kids. Who do you talk to when you start realizing all these things? You certainly can't talk to your wife about this stuff. I mean, when you're just trying to piece things together, who do you go to?
We aspire to become awakened beings, to live in harmony with the truth of life.
From Vast Noodle Media, I'm Trent Bell. This is Knowing and Believing, a podcast about how we believe. Thanks again for tuning in, listening to on the podcast, or tuning in on YouTube to Knowing and Believing. And today is a pretty interesting interview for me because I'm speaking with Brian Beaudette, architect extraordinaire here in Kennebunk, right?
I am, yep.
Yeah. Both you and I spoke at Maine Live. I had no idea, beyond interacting with you as a client, I had no idea about your personal life, and you shared your personal story that's been formative, and a huge part of your life. You shared that publicly at Maine Live, and I thought it would be really interesting to be able to sit down and talk with you because your situation, it has fingers or effects into my life in a huge way. The questioning of my faith began when I started to realize and get to know people that I knew were gay, that were openly gay. Because I grew up in a very conservative, literal religion that had a prepackaged kind of, here's what gay people are, and here's how God feels about gay people, LGBTQ, you name it. I don't think that people were really thinking about it. They had just been fed that line, and maybe some had thought about it and knew better. But that culture, it was just bred and shared, and I absorbed that and really didn't think beyond that because it just didn't affect me. And I think the core of what I was being taught, around teachings of Christ ran contradictory to that, to look for those who might not be as fortunate as you within a situation. And where I should have been thinking, what about the kids that are my age that we knew were gay, but we still teased them? We were not nice to them in many ways. And that must have been so incredibly painful for them at that, incredibly impressionable and vulnerable age for, me to be doing that to other kids. And it wasn't until I got into my 20s that I started to think about that. And then people that I started to get to know that were gay, if I got close enough to them to have the opportunity to talk to them and say, tell me about you and your background, and did you always know this? And everything I started to hear and learn and really walk with these people and experience their lives ran contrary to what I was told. That was a moment of cognitive dissonance for me, where the ideas I held did not agree with my experience. And I had that moment of, am I going to just brush this off and take the millions of people that are born into a similar religious culture as me and not say my piece? Am I just going to continue being comfortable and ignore their plight?
When about was that, roughly?
The
era in your life?
I would say easily in my 20s when I really started to think about it.
Yeah.
And the first person that I knew was gay, that I was of an age of maturity where I wasn't just like, hee.
Yeah.
And he was a really just genuine nice guy. He was working at a Christian summer camp, and he was the most social, nice guy. He was just a beautiful person. And I wasn't like threatened by him or anything like that, but I was just thinking like, why do I hold this idea of this person? And why am I not challenging it? Yet I am upholding this religion and culture and everything else that, arguably puts people in danger that are born into that culture. It puts a stigma on a person forming their identity as a child to think that there's this group of people out there that think they know God and have this idea about a way I was born that I had no choice in. It's just me. I just don't know how I could continue down that path in a clear conscience. And so that began the first part of really reconsidering the things I was holding as true. I got to the point of just not buying that line anymore that I was fed, and realizing, am I going to stay in this religion and lend my money, support, time, reputation, whatever, to that religion? Now, that being said, there's a ton of beautiful people, intelligent people, incredibly well-intentioned people in there that just haven't thought about it.
Right.
Yeah,
my parents included in that. Yep.
So I'm not, trying to harp on that entire thing and say everyone in there is this.
Right.
What I am trying to say to people still in that position is, before you continue within this religion, make sure you have some gay friends that you actually care for and communicate with and have dinner with and spend time with and get to know, and see if you still come away feeling the same way about that. So back to why you're here. I had interacted with you over a decade ago and had no clue that you had been in the closet up till fairly recently.
7 years ago. Yeah.
7 years ago. And I heard about it and I was like, whoa, no clue. Because I knew your situation and everything. And but then saw your main live talk, and it was very touching. We'll have a link to that main live talk below in the description notes and everything else of this, and you can go and watch that. You shared with me it's been a way for you to offer a lot of hope to other people who have gone through this, and we'd love to hear about that. I'm going to try and shut up now and stop going on.
I'm enjoying this.
But I'd really love to hear your story of how society and religious views have influenced, formed, let you down, have hurt, and how you've been able to come past that, or not able to come past it in some instances, maybe, I don't know. So
yeah. No, I can relate very much with you. I was raised a very devout Catholic. I'm one of 6 kids. My parents, by the way, are awesome, and they have evolved enormously in the 7 years since I've come out. But they are very religious. I was very religious, up until freshman year in high school. I wanted to be a priest.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, I took my faith very, very seriously. I went to Catholic schools. I went to a public high school, but then I went back to a Jesuit school, Boston College, which was, quite religious as well. By that point, though, I had pretty much separated myself from the Catholic Church. But it's very interesting. I don't, like you said, I don't think people meant any harm in teaching what they thought was the truth based on what they interpreted the Bible to be. Right. But the harmful effect that it had is I had no clue growing up that I was gay. I mean, I just didn't understand it. This is prepubescent years that, right. I mean, how could you possibly understand what that is when your body's not reacting in that way yet?
Yeah, the hormones aren't telling you,
right.
Sexual attraction.
So I mean, I did feel different than your typical boy, I guess. But I think a lot of people always feel a little bit different. I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know if you did as a straight man, but when you were a boy. But I always felt like I was on the perimeter of the boys' groups.
Really?
Yeah, and I grew up with.
Any reason why, like behaviorally or interests or?
Well, I was very close to my sister growing up. She was a year older than me, and all of our friends in that neighborhood were girls, and so I just learned how to bond with girls. That said, I was a Boy Scout, and I did. I loved it, and had some friends in that. I just never really felt really close friends. I would go and camp and play, hockey, play kickball and all that stuff. But I always felt like I was on the perimeter of all these groups of boys. But that's as far as it went. As far as what that meant, I there was no way I could have figured that out until later in my life. But what it did is, it was like that little slow peck. It's like I don't remember a sermon where, the wrath of God was, thou shalt not sleep with other men, and it was like this big deal, like I've heard in other religions. But it was there, it was very clearly there, and the comments that were made, it's like, like the somebody would pass and they're like, smirk a little bit. And, that I noticed probably more than anything, and that happened in the church. Like there were some along the way. There were plenty of effeminate men that that would get that wrath behind their backs. Of course, it was never to their faces.
Yeah, I had my own moment of thinking that one of the kids in our grade school wasn't sitting right behind me, and he was, and I forget what I said, but it was something like that. And I turned around and he was right there just looking at me. And I mean, at the time I felt bad at the time, but I look back on it now and I just.
But you know what? I mean, you didn't necessarily know any better. I mean, this is everybody, we're in a culture, we're in a community, and we're trying to fit in, and that's sort of our early years is what that's all about.
That's what seems so dangerous to me is that here's a child, man or woman, born and then realizing who they are,
right? And
they're trying to fit in. Children just want to fit in and be accepted within a peer group and within their family, but then we take these spiritual cultures and set up these very literal, very supposedly objective stances on everything, and it puts them on the outside. And at that tender age, to think I can't be on the inside with my family, with peer groups. And I remember as a straight white male not being invited to things that I wished my friends would invite me to. And that was just devastating. Like people would go over to someone else's house, like a friend's house, and I wouldn't get the invite.
Just not having to do with LGBT, just in general.
No, some, really nothing,
Right.
And it would just crash my world for a couple days.
Yeah.
Now, take that and make it I'm born a certain way that these people that I wish I was part of don't accept me. And you see where it pushes, kids to suicide because they're just looking for acceptance. And that right there is the real danger that I don't think people are getting. No,
and I think it's changing slowly but surely. And I think I think your point about going out and meeting people and getting to know somebody before you have these conversations.
Right.
I think that applies with religion, with race, with just about anything. I think people inherently fear the others, it's us and them.
Yeah.
And unless they educate themselves and really get to know that other group, it's always going to be a them, and it's always going to create fear and anger and
Right.
And I think that's what's happened. I think again, I most of my family, I love my family. I'm from a huge extended family.
Well, you're Catholic.
I'm Catholic. That's right. Big families. I mean, I love most of them. And I think they mean well. But I think in the teachings, I think the church and the community, I think they feared their kids meaning the village kids, they feared them going off into a perverted, dangerous lifestyle. And I think that's in their head what they really thought it was, because they weren't educated and they didn't understand that you could live a beautiful existence just like straight people do in the gay, being a gay person. And I think that's what's changing now, is that I think the education is there. I think more and more people, the more people that come out, the more people have gay people in their families, so then there's a personal connection. And I think once that happens, it's sort of a grassroots thing.
Oh, wait, I really know this person. And they're genuine and they have all the same hopes, fears, and dreams that I do. They're just gay.
And oftentimes they already knew them, you know what I mean? So even more reasons. So that's why, it's great that so many people are coming out, and I think that's what's changed the environment so quickly. And, so people have that personal connection, and I think they educate themselves once they have somebody in their lives that they love, and they realize, this isn't this demon that they thought it was.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just raving pervert demon. No, it's just, we're wired differently. And that's also an interesting discussion that I've never really had or even thought much about. But is there any, what is the difference in people that a person is born one way or the other? There's no theory.
I don't think there is.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine once, and who was gay, and he was telling me about an article that he had read that had kind of explored an evolutionary, what would you call it? An evolutionary argument for or explanation.
Like a biological reason for it? Yes.
If there's, some intelligence in evolution in that, whatever, that some of the audience right now is like, pause, done, not watching. But that you'd have an advantage were some of your men not married and having to take care of, and you have more strong male. It's kind of like you have more drone bees to protect the hive. It's like we've got more men that are not obligated to these children. They're more obligated to the community all of a sudden. Yes. And this was just, I'm assuming, like an exploratory explanation of homosexuality. And it was interesting to hear this person say that, but then at the same time, I could be wrong, but I had this realization that what he had found in that was, felt really sad to me, but it sounded like he had found a reason for him. Like he didn't know why. He had gone through all this pain and rejection and everything else, but maybe beyond this immediate culture and everything else, there's a reason for me. There's a purpose for me, and that was really hard for me to.
Well, I went through
and I
that.
didn't even ask him.
Yeah, but I think most people, most gay men. I mean, I've had these conversations with a lot of gay men, which is great. So now that I'm out, I can just. My understanding of everything about myself has grown exponentially because I can just put it out there now. Right. And chances are, if there's a room full of gay men, chances are they experienced 90% of what I went through. So it's almost like you have instant bonding, Right. Just the fact that you were raised as a closeted gay man in our generation, it's like you fought in the same dugout. I mean, what do you call those? Foxholes. Totally. It's just you have that connection, and it's pretty. And I think there's. I always look for silver linings. There's tons of silver linings. I think when people are marginalized, they develop a sense of empathy for others that I don't think they could possibly have learned unless they were somehow marginalized or one of their loved ones was marginalized, and you know what I mean? I think you almost have to go through that in order to truly feel the pain of others.
Right. I find areas where I personally fail, I realize a lot more forgiveness towards other people. And you start to realize you got to give people a little more grace here, Trent, and not be so judgmental all the time.
Well, I mean, I don't think you're a judgmental person, and I give you tons of credit for what you're doing. All right. I mean, the fact that you're putting this out there in the general public is really incredible.
Well, the more I fail, the the more I learn. I mean, it really is a it's just like failure teaches you so much. And going through those moments of pain does make you so much more empathetic to others.
I first of all, I think everybody has been marginalized in some way or form. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think I am, me being a gay man puts me at some sort of elite group of victims. I definitely don't feel that way. No, I think we all have had troubles, and I think the ones that can tap into that and learn empathy, I really give them a lot of credit for doing so. Yeah, but this, and I've been marginalized not just for being gay. I mean, I've been marginalized for not throwing a ball correctly, which has really nothing to do with being gay, or just so many other things,
Right.
maybe I wasn't like a certain kind of student in architecture school, so I was marginalized for that.
Right.
It's just, I could go on and on throughout my life, and I think everybody has experiences, and, kind of gives them a little bit of insecurities.
Yeah, and I wonder how people react. I think that's a huge, not marker, but it's a huge point in life when you fail or when you're marginalized. What do you do with that?
Right.
Do you take that failure, learn from it, and actually, turn it into something that you can learn from and share? I've found that sharing failures and sharing weakness is a very cathartic and empowering
Absolutely.
process.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make me any more comfortable when I wake up in the middle of the night scared that there is no God.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is a better existence than when I was kind of just towing a company line.
Yeah.
And just conflicted and confused.
Mm-hmm.
So I have, to a degree, a better connection with people now that I'm out of the closet, questioning religiously, and I connect with people more so around that rather than...
Well, first of all, there's so many closets.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, no, that's. I think you're dead on there. Yeah.
So, growing up, when you came to a point of, was there a point when you realized, like it hit you, oh man, I'm gay? Was there a point?
No, even when I came out 7 years ago, I thought I was still bisexual. I mean, that's how confused I was. And backing up a little bit.
Why do you think that is?
Well, this is one of my favorite thought processes with the whole gay thing is, growing up, I was certainly wired to be gay. I am gay. I'm not bisexual. I'm gay. And I know I've been wired this way since the
gay.
day. Absolutely.
Gay all the way.
There's no questioning it. But it took years to get to that point. But I look back and that's the way it was. But, trying to fit into society, I had to learn how to be straight. Subconsciously, I was taught how to be straight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, when somebody questions, the fact that it's almost like, if somebody has a hard time with me being gay, like let's say a guy comes up to me and talks to me about that. Well, what if I forced him to have sex with another man? I mean, in a way, that's what the community did to me with women.
I've often thought about that.
It's
that if
the
I
same...
was born into a world where gay was the norm and I was straight, but it wouldn't be quite so odd to then have to make myself be gay because there would be all the social pressures, but I would still be like, but I'm so attracted to this, not that.
But see, then you would be the minority, or you would be the outsider, like I was the outsider. So I learned how to be straight, and I thought I was pretty damn good at it.
Well, you had me fooled. I didn't.
Well,
think anything of it.
And I'm not trying to fool anybody, but I was good at soccer, I was good at tennis, I was good at hockey, I was good at sports. So okay, check.
Yeah.
And I dated lots of girls in high school. Check. It's like I did certain things that I felt like there's no way I can be gay. It's like but I'd still question it.
Soccer. I can't be gay.
There's a quote.
So good at talking with these women too. There's no way. All right, that's going to be the quote for the podcast. I was so good at soccer. There's no way.
I look great in those soccer shorts.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I digress. So, but it's fascinating to think about that. I actually learned how to be straight. Therefore, any straight man could learn to be gay technically. Technically, it would never happen.
Were the societal pressures just different?
Right.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it seems to be like people who have just a hard time understanding the whole homosexuality thing. When I finally throw it out there like that, I think it connects with them a little bit more, like realizing.
Yeah, it at least gives them a point to contrast it with, and
right.
Be like, oh. Whoa, we did that to you. Man,
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sorry.
Oh, there's no way I could have sex with a man.
Yeah.
Well,
welcome
guess
to
what?
my life.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's but we have come so far, and I some of these conversations, I don't remember. It's happened maybe a few times where people came up to me and actually asked questions like that. It's always a little shocking, but
really?
Where they're truly like almost doubting the fact that you're gay, like I would ever do this just
show
for the
me
hell of it.
Show me your union card.
My gay card.
Yeah, no, right
Yeah, I wasn't sure, so I just came out. Yeah, no, that doesn't happen. It's just such a process.
Something else,
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. But, I have, as far as bringing it back to the religion is, it was, it wasn't the gay thing that turned me away from religion. It was when I was getting confirmed. I was going to a public high school at the time, even though I did a lot of Catholic schooling. And when you're in public school, we got confirmed, which is, do you know what being confirmed is? It's
kind of like Catholic baptism, is it?
Yeah, but it's you're an adult. So whereas baptism, you're
kind of like a bat
somebody's
mitzvah,
but now you're the one that's committing to the religion for life.
Got it.
So
Okay.
it's like marrying the church as an adult. You're making that decision. So
Sure.
we did it in, I think, junior year in high school. So I was about 16 years old, and we had to do catechism, which is, if you don't go to a Catholic school where you're learning theology, you have to go to a special class at the church, and they teach you theology of their religion.
Yep.
And I had this phenomenal teacher who actually covered all the different religions, because he wanted to make sure that we understood other religions so that we're making the correct choice in saying, okay, I choose the Catholic Church instead.
It's a fair point.
Which surprises me when I think back. I wonder if they knew he was teaching
Right.
that. And I remember the last assignment before our confirmation, he said, I want you to go home and I want you to write a list of questions of anything you're doubting, which was great. Of course, I probably took it more seriously than anybody. I think I'm the only one that even had questions. I had a list of 10 questions, and I wish I had saved it. But one of the questions was, why was it so important for the Mary to be a virgin if God, created us and this, like things like that, just thought-provoking things. And he didn't have an answer for any of them. And I was like,
You walked away like, I'm going to get an A.
But that was a week before I'm supposed to promise that I'm going to be in this religion for life.
Yeah, that's not good.
So of course I went through the ritual, but it was that point that I started doubting. And I am very spiritual in my life, but I'm not religious. I don't follow a doctrine of any kind.
I'm coming to that
and I'm not preaching, like that's just how I arrived, but it was not just something that just happened, without thought. I dug deep. I learned about Buddhism. I went to the UU church. I went to all these other churches to try and find this new faith that I was going to tap into. And I just it slowly evolved. And this is my thinking. Again, it's nobody else's. It's what I've come to, is that my mind, I liken my mind to a cell on my hand. Like that cell has no idea that it's part of this body.
Right.
And I think my brain just can't comprehend that I'm part of something much, much bigger than this. So I let it go, and I was like, I just know I won't understand it ever. And so that gives me the peace of, like, I know something's out there. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
So,
And it's interesting when you say that. A lot of people take the word thing to mean a singular kind of encapsulated size of something. It's a thing. We can put our hands on it, or
No, it's energy. I mean, I believe it's energy, because you can't create or destroy energy. So somehow I feel like it's wrapped up in energy, and that's as far as I go. Otherwise it starts driving me crazy.
I'm there. Last 2 weeks ago, I had probably the best existential crisis I've ever had so far. But it is when you really start to emotionally embrace the questions. I have a hard time explaining this, but you can know facts, but then emotionally accept them.
Yeah.
And
that gut, that sort of inner voice.
It's like,
do I buy that? Do I not buy that?
Yeah. And it's I think the emotional door opening for some of those questions that are deeply troubling that you don't have an answer for. And then I think is the point where, if you're going to have faith, it's a choice to live in the tension between the ability to objectively know that there's a God and claiming that there is not anything. I think it's a point of maturity to embrace living in that tension, and that's really hard. And
it's really hard, but I think it's so important, and to me, it's more spiritual. The fact that you're even challenging, or anybody is actually challenging their faith, tells me that it's important enough that they're willing to be uncomfortable with the topic, and that to me speaks volumes about that person. I feel like they're more spiritual than people who just automatically go to church once a week and just sit in the pew and listen to a sermon once a week. It's like I
had an interesting thought recently about, and it applies kind of to what you're saying. I was riding my bike listening to a podcast, and I had this thought about the difference between community and tribalism. They're both groups of people. The thing that evens out and is so good about community is like someone will be losing a parent one day, but at the same time, someone's having a child. And that pain and that joy throughout the community, if you're close, they're like a net that evens it out. It's never going to go too deep. You can be losing that mother, but your close friend is having a baby, and you can really, that community is there. And that really it's a unifying thing. And it's based on the principles of love and sharing and giving and support. It's based around all those things and embracing what's possible, embracing the pain, embracing the joy and the love. Whereas if you then go to tribalism, same deal. You got a group of people, but it's very exclusionary. And it's very our way and our way only. And we're going to approach the entirety of this life as we can attempt to control it because we've got a tribe and a system of doing things, and that'll make us, within our own abilities, take on life and tame it, And I think when in a community, when you can accept love and go with just, I hate saying stuff like this, but go with the flow of love. I'm not a hippie or whatever.
That sounds good.
Compared to like, we've got a regimented way of doing things as a tribe, and we're going to go right over life and we're going to conquer it. There's a difference there. Yeah. And if I take, the spiritual books that I was raised on, being the Bible, and look at what it teaches, tribalism is not in there, yet religion has created that. Yeah. And it's the things like, homophobia that tribalism brings to the table, in my opinion. And I think there is tribalism in the Bible. And I think there are, ways of interpreting the Bible or just blatant things in the Bible that are not good. And there's a reinterpreting of the Bible that I think is currently going on in the general consciousness of people that care about the Bible. But it's an interesting thing that I was just kind of riding my bike and I stopped and I was like, I gotta write this down. This is weird.
Yeah, no, it's a cool, it's a cool comparison, and I think it brings light to things, especially when you're dealing with the Bible. Is like I do know the Bible, being Catholic. We got to know it very well, and I don't believe in Jesus Christ. I believe there could have been somebody like Jesus Christ. And I think he would have, this is going to sound horrible, but I think he could have been a gay man. Like when I think of somebody,
so horrible? I mean,
somebody who's sensitive,
you guys are really sensitive and friendly people,
and we're open to marginalized people, and there is a lot of scripture that describes him as being just that. And he why was he being outcast? Why were these groups of men following him? I mean, I don't want to get too far down that. But he the Mary Magdalene. I mean, welcome anybody who's on the outskirts. Right. That was what he was about, and that's what the teachings were supposed to be about.
Cry. That, to me, that's like so beautiful that the inclusion, like you see the pictures of like Black Jesus.
Exactly.
And it's like,
exactly.
Who is Jesus? This is my some days I'm an atheist, honestly, and some days I hope there's a God, and I'm still kind of like middle and far right, and I don't like the days when I'm far right, left, whatever you want to call it, atheist. They don't feel nice. Yeah, I feel like I'm cutting what's possible off. Yeah, but
right.
The beauty in that is the relating to, and
which is really what the religion. I mean, that's the basis to a lot of these religions is, be kind to people, basically. Oh, yeah. Love others as you'd love yourself. I mean, what happened to those messages? It's like, I feel like that got lost in the last generation, probably longer than that, but
well, if you look into like the kind of the birth of fundamentalism in the early 1900s, things like Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventist, Mormonism, the Fox sisters, there was a whole spirituality awakening in the late 1800s, early 1900s that, and then there was the whole evolution being taught in public schools and the pushback on that, and that's a long discussion there, but that's where a lot of this more concrete ideas around spirituality came from.
Okay.
And if you look back at more of the ancient religions, from the things I've read and people who spend their lives looking into this, they'll tell you that the older practices of Judaism, they had the practice of you would not name the name of God, lest you take it and try and encapsulate it within your own understanding.
Oh, wow.
And that there was a danger in that. And lo and behold, here we have this danger.
Wait, in not naming it?
There was a danger in naming God, like even saying the name, because then you become familiar with it and you then bring God into your own understanding to a degree where you start to have God emulate what you think it should be.
Right, yeah.
And that's a really interesting thing to me. And
well, that actually brings up a really good point, because I just discovered in a topic that I never really noticed before is the difference between hope and faith. And
ooh, interesting.
Yeah, and like I cast away faith years ago. Faith meaning a belief in a doctrine. That to me was
your
what
idea
faith
of
was.
Yeah.
Whereas hope, I believe that we couldn't exist without hope. I think we would live in despair, and I don't think we could thrive without hope. So I think you're struggling with this idea of whether it's a God or not. I think that's human. I think you're holding on to hope, and if you don't hold on to that, what do you have? So yeah. I think we all have to carry hope somehow just to get through the day and get through life, but I think it's just a different nomenclature, really. I think we're probably talking, with the audience out there who are very faithful. I think we're probably talking about the same thing. It's just a different perspective is all.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that you and I seem to have intentionally stepped back from, was this idea of hope turned into tribalism. That's kind of what I see religion as.
Oh,
you take hope and
yes.
you say, let's put this into a box so we can package it.
Right, and this is the only way to go about things, and
right,
and then
we've got it.
Right, exactly, and then
and
the us.
Only us.
Well, then it's us and them thing. To me there's so many problems with the us and them mentality, and I know it's probably a survival mechanism. I think we needed that in order to protect ourselves from other groups. Back in the Stone Age, but. I think it's a carryover that's not doing us a service as a community anymore. No, there's a lot of breakdown of a worldview will happen mostly when you interact with people that you respect but are vastly different than you. Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I think it's all about education. Again, you're sparking these personal connections with what used to be them, and then all of a sudden them is us or we, and it's like, that changes everything at that point. And I get it. I think, fear is, a survival mechanism, and I think it's served us well over the years to at least survive, but we don't need those things anymore. Or at least not a lot of, not as much as I think we have in our DNA.
Right.
And, how do you unteach your DNA sometimes is the hard part. But,
yeah, I think that's what we're mainly going through right now, and especially with the connectivity of social media and the internet age, and just information is so widely and evenly distributed now that how can you live in such a bubble?
Exactly.
So as much as I hate going around and seeing everyone just like this, the upside is that we have a lot more dissemination of ideas, if that's the right word.
I agree. And a lot of people I talk to, they say, the world is just in a horrible place right now. I agree to some extent, and other, I almost feel like it's just because we know these things now. I mean, people, aggressive
same thing. Like it's always
men have always been there, and I'm not going to name names, but they've always been there. It's just that now we know what they're up to. We know the horrible things they can actually do.
Right, and the stuff that gets clicks or staying on the news are the horrible things.
Yeah.
It's not as much
Right,
fun.
exactly. So,
Although I am a huge sucker for the soldiers coming home and reuniting with
Yeah, I
their kids,
know.
or the someone helped save a mouse from getting run over. I
oh
love
yeah,
those.
and we why not? Those are great stories.
Right.
I'm always a sucker for the puppies on Facebook. So
Puppies
we
and
all
kittens, man. People,
they get me every
it's like,
time.
just zone everything else out, and I'm just gonna look at some kittens. And I know I on some of the videos that I've done, the more humorous ones, I've used that as an example of like everyone's just checking out and only care, but like I find myself like I go by and I'm like, oh, that is kind of cute. But so in sharing your main live talk, you had expressed when we spoke on the phone that you've had a lot of contact with other individuals in the same situation that
Yeah.
you've been able to help and give hope to without divulging any personal information or anything like that. What are the stories you can share of how it's helped others? You're sharing your experience.
I mean, I knew it was probably going to get out there to a certain extent. I had no idea. I mean, there's 11,000 views on that video.
Wow.
And they're from, I get calls, I still get calls from all over the country, even Canada. So I guess, you can, international. But, and again, I had mentioned before where it's like you're being in, as soon as you're in a room full of closeted gay men in our generation, it's like you were in the foxhole with them and you have this instant bond. Same thing applies. These guys will reach out to me and, they're like 4 steps behind me oftentimes, 5 steps further behind me. And, and they don't know where to go. Because I was there. Who do you talk to when you start realizing all these things? You certainly can't talk to your wife about this stuff. I mean, when you're just trying to like piece things together and, it's like, who do you go to? And we didn't have internet as, when I, way back to really, when I really could have, put some pieces together. So it wasn't until recently, but internet, social media, all helps now because people can reach out. And that's what they were doing is they'd see my video, however way, I think it was shared on like the gay dads group. There was another gay, national group that was shared. And, every now and then I'll get pops of messages because all of a sudden it was shared on this big group. And oh my God, you hear the stories, and it brings me right back to the times when I was struggling myself, and suicidal feelings. It's almost like you can't run into another gay man who hasn't had those feelings. It seems. I'm sure that they're out there, but most people I talk to have gone through periods where they were suicidal. And these are the guys, and they're at that point. So I mean, this is like heavy stuff coming at me. And I feel like every word sometimes is I've got to be careful.
Much writing on it.
So I can't get into the details, and they're as varied as you would think they are at being different stages, different scenarios. Some wives already know, but it doesn't make it any easier. It's some are just dealing with their parents, but it's an amazing situation, and I think being a gay dad. Having been in the closet, I think that brings about different types of issues, and I think that's what they're the ones that are reaching out to me. They tend to be closeted gay men who have kids, and and I just try to give them some of my experiences, but I also try to make sure that they have somebody in their lives that they can talk to. That's like the first thing I have to mention is, please reach out, keep reaching out, keep talking, keep questioning anybody you can, who will offer an ear, because it's a critical point. And
Huge. Especially, do you find that it coincides with midlife? Because
yes.
I don't think it's any small coincidence that I've more openly said I have to deal with these issues of belief around 40, and my good friend Caleb Johnson, who's gone through the same process, that I think there is something about that midlife, like, all right, I've done this for 40 years or however, and there's problems with it. Am I gonna just bury this and live with it? Nope. can't do. You realize, I think I can't.
Yeah.
marry
Well,
that.
I think when you're younger, you feel like you sort of set whatever path you have envisioned for your life, and there's no reason why you would think that you can't stick with that. Even if it's some of it's manufactured, it's not truly you, but you have this vision of where you want your life to go. And I think most people set out thinking they can achieve that and just honor it and be that way.
Right.
But you're right. I think as you get older and you start, weighing out what's important in your life and what's not, and you just get a different perspective on life in general. And it seems to happen right about that time. I think by then you've established a career, you've got kids, you're okay. Then you look around and it's like, okay, is this it?
All right. It's kind of like you've done all the work to get to kind of a little bit of a plateau, and you're on a little bit of a you can stop pedaling for a second.
Yeah,
you're like,
exactly.
Wait a minute, I've got issues.
Yeah.
And it's like
Something just doesn't
some
feel
things
right still.
I need to deal with here.
Yeah. And at that point, I think most of us thought that at that point we would feel like we've arrived. This is where I wanted my life. And when we all get there, it's like, well, something's just not right. Whether, it could be whatever, we all come from different backgrounds, but I think you're right. At that age is when we start questioning,
right.
if we're leading this life the way we intended and want out of it.
So, 2 points of advice that I'd love from you. For one, anyone out there who would be in a religious culture like mine, conservative Catholic culture, whatever, that what advice would you give to people who are in that are gay, that are struggling with, what do I do? Or the people that have loved ones who themselves are not gay, but their loved one is going through this, be it their wife, their husband, their son, their daughter. What is your advice to both sides of that equation coming from that?
Well, I'll speak directly to one guy who just recently called me. I mentioned this guy from Texas. He's actually in his 30s, and his community is his church. It's just
the South is big.
Exactly, and there is nothing else outside of that.
There's
it's
a
all
lot
in
of
one.
Progressive churches down south sprouting up.
Yeah, but he's in a small town, and this is it. And for people like that, he reached out to me. There was nobody in his community that he felt he could. He had to go to Maine, but social media, that you can reach out to people now, and whoever if you're out there, whoever you think might be able to help, just reach out for them. Just start talking. You may not even know what to ask. You may not even understand where you're at. You just start somewhere. But if you're not feeling right, there's something's wrong, and you're just questioning things. Just talk. That to me is the biggest thing. Somebody that you can trust and just vent. As long as you can vent, then you bring yourself back to and then you can start thinking on your own again. But when when things build up, your brain's not working the way it should be. It's like that fight or flight, and your brain capacity is not thinking like rationally like it normally would be, because it's on the verge of running, or attacking or something. And that's the case with everything. I think, I tell my son that, when he gets upset with something in life, he just, stay cool. Just bring it back down, however way that is.
Right.
And that's reaching out to somebody, I think, brings you there. And then, to me, most people can handle most things in the present. Once you bring yourself down off of a heated moment, once you're back in the present moment, I feel like we can really make good judgment, good decisions. And it certainly helps with other people in the conversation too. Now, for the people who are observing this, it's like they're part of a church. They know some people who are gay, and they're kind of trapped in there. Reach out to them. I know you can't go up to somebody and ask them, "Are you gay?" That wouldn't work. But just be there for them. I just noticed you're not. You just seem off a little bit. Is there something you want to talk about? That right there shows compassion. And when people know that there's compassionate people around them, it just feels better. And again, I think that's doing them probably. You're not preaching to them. Do not tell them this is what they need to do. This is when you need to do it, because that to me is the worst advice. it doesn't work. It just puts you on the defensive, and then you don't know where to go from there. But it's just open yourself up, and they will come around somehow, some way. Don't push the issue. When they're comfortable, they'll talk.
Now, what about people that might be watching this or listening to it that have this religious view, spiritual view still, that God, if you take some of the Bible's passages literally, they're pretty bad, but lo and behold, there wasn't even a term for homosexual before the King James Version. That's
amazing,
a long discussion in itself too. But the people that take the Bible literally and apply it literally from one culture to now this culture and say, no, you're going to burn in hell. Like, there's a hell. Don't,
No, I know.
And like, how do you, what would your advice be to them if they're not going to hear you unless they're at least somewhere in the back of their mind thinking, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this. I'll listen to what someone has to say on it. What would be your advice to them to approach reconsidering that issue?
It's great. First of all, there are so many narcissists out there, and I think narcissists have their own beliefs, and you cannot change their beliefs. There's nothing you can do, as far as I'm concerned, if a narcissist has a certain view. So, unfortunately, I think, and I hate even saying this, but I think they're a lost cause. I don't think there's changing. There's a group of people that you will never change their mind. They're adamant. Because really, the Bible has tons of conflicting messages and passages that don't apply to today's world.
I'm going with love fundamentalist.
Love fundamentalist.
I'll go fundamentalist on love. I'm going to try that and see how it works.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like, fundamentally, that's where I'm going. Love. It.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, right.
If I'm going to be a fundamentalist about something,
there we go. Right. Okay.
Why don't we just choose that?
That's right.
Talks about that. We'll go there.
That's right. So I think people, again, if the more people that they know that are on the margins and they get to know them, I think the more empathy they'll have. If they're capable of empathy, narcissists are not capable of empathy. So there's, like I said, there's that, and there's a lot of them. So I think there's nothing you can do with a certain population there, and they're probably the ones that are the most vocal. So I have a theory that there are so many, dedicated, truly faithful religious people out there who don't buy into a lot of this stuff. They do maybe on the face value of it so that they can fit into the community, but I have hope. I have hope that, or at least in my perspective, I feel like they question it. They just feel like they can't admit that they're questioning these things.
What about the advice of maybe like, all right, if let's say me maybe 15 years ago, still thinking that, well, gee, I was raised in this church and they have a pretty adamant view about homosexuality. It was kind of a pandering view of love the sinner, hate the sin.
Yes,
you can come and worship with us, but you'll never hold a position of authority at all in the church.
It's garbage. Else. It's right.
Yeah, and so they had that position. Say me 15 years ago, thinking like, they've got this on lockdown. Hence, I have it on lockdown, I guess, but it doesn't seem right. If I could have at that time gone and found a gay person that I respected enough to listen to their opinion. I mean, obviously, there's horrible gay people out there. As there's horrible straight people.
Exactly. Right.
So we can cherry pick our horrible people, but find someone who's gay that is a good person that you respect just as a person, and leave their sexuality out of determining that if you're of that position, and then just go out to dinner with them and talk to them as a person, and just talk to them, and be their friend, and see. Acquaint yourself with someone outside of your circle of what you think you know. Yeah. And see if you still have that same opinion. And
well, for some people that would probably be difficult, to reach out and actually invite themselves out. I mean, those who can do it, great. But for instance, I went to, I don't know if you're familiar with Boston Spirit Magazine. It's sort of the gay center publication for the Boston area, and they had an executive networking night last week. And the keynote speaker was Kristen Beck, who was a Navy SEAL, and she has since transitioned to a woman. I know some transgender people. I don't know their deep down stories. Having that 25 minutes of Kristen speaking, I had goosebumps. It's just exposing yourself to these stories, like you were saying. Whether it's in person or even just going online and listening to other podcasts, other people who have my video. It's like there's a lot out there on social media, on the internet, and I think if they just reached out and watched a few of those, few documentaries, I think they're gonna feel that there's a person behind that label. And I think once they do that, then I think they're on their way.
There with the same hopes, dreams, fears, and everything else.
Exactly.
That has to live in the same human skin that we all do.
It becomes us and we. That's all. That's everything across the board. To me, us and we are like the most beautiful words. And I think if we can change our thinking about fear and them and all that, I think we're going to be a phenomenal society.
Yeah. It's gone by very quick. But is there anything you'd want to share with them to be, what do they call that when they send someone to another country? An ambassador?
Ambassador, yeah. I have my struggles. I've got 3 amazing kids. I lived a very normal life, whatever the heck that means. As far as somebody from the outside looking in, it wasn't a deviant lifestyle. It was a real, authentic. I know so many beautiful gay men who have adopted kids. I mean, we're just like everybody else. Not everybody, like you said, but the percentages are the same. We are just all part of the same group, and it's one more thing that just separates us needlessly. Right.
Well, Brian, thank you again so much for, sharing your story.
This has been great. Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me share it too. You're doing me a favor as well by getting my, whatever experience I have out there and hopefully helping somebody who's watching.
Brian Beaudette, thanks again, and thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time around.
Thank you.